Good evening and welcome to tonight's show. I am your host, Tina Dawson, the owner of True Blue Designs, and it is truly an honor to be with you this evening. We ask that you like, share, and let everybody know that we are on the air. Make sure that you share this on your Facebook page or you share this from YouTube. We are streaming simultaneously from our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, and that's True Blue Designs. Now, I am so excited to bring tonight's guest to you. He is full of information. Get your paper and get your pen and get ready to jot down some good information. Tonight, we're talking about education in the pandemic. Now, since late December 2019, and I would really say March of 2020, COVID has been wreaking havoc across the world. And the education sector globally has been hit hard. Students, schools, colleges, and universities have been deeply impacted. Now, there was an unprecedented rise in e-learning, and everyone had to quickly adjust. Now it's time for children to start back going to school, and things are very different from the way they left them in 2020. With anxiety being at an all-time high, how can the education system help parents and students adjust to their new norm? Well, tonight's guest is here to discuss the impact that COVID-19 is having on our education system and to get his perspective on the much needed long-term reform. Please help me give a warm welcome to tonight's guest, Mr. Ulysses Smallwood. Hey.
Hey.
How you doing?
Oh, I am super duper. Like we talked about earlier, our first day today, I was back in there as we speak about education. So yes, let's talk about it.
Well, first of all, how is the family? I ask everybody this. How is the family? How's your family doing?
The family is super. Everybody, I'm in a family of educators. My wife, she's an educator as well. So she is a counselor in the school system. So she was back in this week. My son, 16-year-old. So he's a junior going to school, but he's in the band program. So band camp has been in full swing. And my daughters are educators or budding educators as well. So this is just an educational family. So everybody is getting the cobwebs out of their mind, getting the fog out, and getting ready for this 2021-2022 school year.
And it is not like it was before. Everybody has to get adjusted to the new norm. And I was sharing with you, even on the collegiate level, I work for a private university here in Atlanta. And, they're still trying to get the cobwebs out. Every day there's something new. I think just this morning, CDC had put out new guidelines.
Yes.
I think the university and collegiate company or corporate or whatever that is, they put out new guidelines. Yeah. So, and I'm sure that the school system, the APS or the Georgia school system has put out some guidelines too. And we're going to talk about that tonight.
Okay. Yes. It's kind of like we're building the plane as we fly because, with the new variants coming out, whereas in June, it looked like schools were just going to be opened up. However, now, like you say, day by day, we're getting new directives. So it's a challenge.
Yeah, it is. But one that we can overcome if we work together.
We will.
Right. Okay, well, we're going to start off by allowing you to tell the viewers a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I always structure how I introduce myself by my most proudest achievements. I am Ulysses Smallwood. I am a husband first. Well, no, let me restructure that. I'm a man of God first.
All right.
Husband second. 17 years on Saturday, July 31st. This coming Saturday, by the way.
Congratulations.
Thank you. A father of 3. 29, 20, and 16, 2 girls, 1 boy, grandfather
Okay.
as well as I am an educator. Been in the school system now for, I would say, maybe 17 years, but I come from a family of educators too, so I've always been in schools. My mom was a long-term elementary teacher, but
Hmm.
I've been in the school system for 17 years. Started out as a substitute teacher, worked my way to a paraprofessional, taught third grade for maybe 4 or 5 years, and then I got the position of administrative assistant at my current school.
Okay.
And then I also moonlight as a councilman in the wonderful city that's situated to succeed,
Good.
Fairburn, Georgia, 20 miles south of the airport. Come on down and enjoy our city when you can. And like I say, that's me.
You know, Fairburn is up and coming, and it's
Yes,
beautiful. It's
yes,
beautiful. It's kind of
yes,
like off the beaten path. That's what I like about it.
yes.
It's city, but it's kind of rural to me.
And
It's
that's
very quiet
right.
out there.
And that's the charm of Fairburn, that most people say they love Fairburn for its quaint environment. But like you say, you still are close to, if you want to get into some city living, and but it's really, really, really quiet, which is what drew us here like 5, 6 years ago.
So let me ask you this. So how has your position as councilman helped with you being an administrator?
Well, I would say it just helps me to see through various lenses.
Mhm.
So it was really, I would say, probably opposite, that my role as an administrator helped me more with being a councilman, because being an administrator at a school, I'm privy to a lot of things that people don't understand. So you look at a school and you just think it's all about teaching kids, which is our first and most important thing, teaching that curricular aim. But there's more that's involved within that school. There's the budget, there's custodians, there's food,
Mhm.
there's IT, there's a lot. I always say that my principal is like a CEO. So while
Okay.
the main goal is about being a champion of kids and the curricular aim, it's about so much more. So
Mhm.
working with my administrative staff for like 7 years, when I became a councilman, well, at that time, maybe 4 to 5 years at that time, but 7 years now, I was able to kind of understand budgets, kind of understand the big picture. So when you're sitting on council, a lot of people, I even want to kind of reframe how we look at it, because people will say, what are you going to do when you get on council? Well, there is no me in council like that. That's my new thing. Like when you say there's no I in team, there's no me in council, particularly in Fairburn, because we are at large. We don't have districts. So I, as well as all my council members and my mayor, are responsible for the entire Fairburn. So it's how we're going to work together.
Right.
How we're going to pass policy for the good of all of our citizens, as well as we can't be just concerned with the needs of one side of Fairburn as opposed to the other side of Fairburn. A lot of times you have to put your personal um, beliefs or ideas on the back burner and say, well, is what that is proposed, is it good for all of Fairburn? So
Okay.
I think it's just really understanding that there's a big picture. And both
Mhm.
of my roles, whether it's administrator at the school and council member, I'm having to look at things beyond just me.
Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm. And that makes sense too. And I'm glad you went into detail about it. Now, you being a councilman is an elected position, correct?
Yes.
So it's elected position. Okay. And how long do you hold that seat per each
It's 4
election?
years. 4 years. Actually, I have to qualify, which means register to run again
Okay.
on August 16th. Well, it's the 16th through the 18th, because I was elected in 2017, took office January of 2018. So
Mhm.
I am in my 4th year currently right now. I do plan on running again, which is why I said in August I will have to qualify again. We campaign and run until November, and I believe November 2nd may be the election date this year. Yep. So it's
Okay.
a 4-year position.
Okay, 4-year position. Okay. And what are some just a couple of some key goals that you all have collectively working together as a team, the councilman and the mayor for the city of Fairburn?
Well, and like you said before, Fairburn is known as being a quaint community, but the object and the goal for any city is to maintain the quality of life for your citizens, but
Mm-hmm.
as well as push the city forward.
Right.
Now, sometimes that's where the challenge comes, meets ahead because you have new people, let's just say millennials moving into the city, but then you
Mm-hmm.
also have your seasoned saints or people that live in the city. So they don't necessarily want to see it become like metropolitan Atlanta,
Right.
in its busyness. That's what I'm talking about, just busy.
Mm-hmm.
But then you also have to factor in that you do have new people moving into the city. So you want to make sure that their needs are met as well. So
Right.
the goal is always to keep, which is our mantra in Fairburn, situated to succeed. And so
Oh.
succeeding for all members of our city.
Mhm.
Now that's a challenge. Exit 61, what a lot of people don't understand, Exit 61 not only facilitates Fairburn, but also facilitates Tyrone as well as Peachtree City. But
Okay.
we get the rap a lot of the times for the traffic that's there. But
Mhm.
we're not the only people, the Fairburn citizens, on Highway 60. I mean on Exit 61.
Mhm.
So traffic. You got Atlanta and the 8 metro cities: Atlanta, East Point, College Park, Union City, Palmetto, City of South Fulton, Chat Hills. All of these cities are growing at a rapid rate, right? So the
Mhm.
challenge is, how do you keep your citizens' needs met, but everybody around you is growing as well? And that growth means
Okay.
I don't think anybody right now goes out of their house and would have thought what we see now as being the norm. I'm at
Right.
the gas station and I see nothing but Amazon trucks
Mhm.
because Amazon is the way of life now. We
Right.
couldn't have seen that a few years before, but
Right.
it's here now. So
Yeah.
with new warehouses, with new development, with new people coming to your state, not just your city, but your state,
Mhm.
the whole challenge is to make sure that you meet the needs of everyone. And so
Right.
growth will be inevitable, but at
Mhm.
the same time, how do we maintain, like you said, off that beaten path,
Right.
that Fairburn, leaving your door open with just
Mhm.
the screen door,
Yeah.
so that type of thing is what we see in Fairburn. But I think we've done a pretty good job.
Okay. Yeah, I think you have too. Now let me ask you this: are you from Atlanta, or are you what I call a transplant?
Well, we often have these conversations on media because old school Atlanta battles new school Atlanta. Excuse me, but we often try to come up with a calibration point to what makes you from Atlanta.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you've done elementary and high school in Atlanta,
Yeah.
you old school Atlanta.
That's
So
right.
here's how I answer that question. I
Okay.
wasn't born in Atlanta. I
Okay.
was born in New Orleans, Louisiana. All right.
Okay.
I'll date myself because I love my age. I'm 50 years old this year,
Okay.
right? So
Okay.
1971, I'm born, but my parents come here in 1973. All
Okay.
right. So
Okay.
I did all school here,
Okay.
right? So
So you're from
I
Atlanta.
I have a recollection of all the movements before we had all of this traffic, before the Olympics. Like I
Yeah.
say, Anderson Park, Douglas High. If you come from Atlanta, there are 2 high schools, Doug and Mays.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doug, me, 1989 Doug High. So I'm an official A-Town representative.
All right.
Yes, yes.
You're right. I've been here since the third grade. I was
So
given a stop in California.
yeah, you
I'm
from
from
Atlanta.
Atlanta.
And look, we don't even say Atlanta, Atlanta.
Yeah.
It's 2 N's, Atlanta. We
Hey.
from Atlanta. Everybody else from Atlanta.
That's
If you
right.
didn't do school down here, we from Atlanta. I lived down the street from Jelly Bean Skating Rink.
Oh
All
wow.
right. From what ATL is made after Jelly Bean Skating Rink, the movie,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So all that Greenbrier Mall, Gold Mine, all that. Don't need. I digress. I won't even get into all that old school Atlanta stuff. But I'm Atlanta
Look, we will have to invite you back just to talk about that. What
just for the
was
A Town show. Yes,
yeah.
just for the A Town show. Yes.
So you mentioned that you were raised in a family full of educators, right?
Yes.
But what was it that you saw that encouraged or interested you to follow in their footsteps to get into education?
Well, here's the thing. I didn't choose education. Education chose me.
Okay.
So I had no aspirations to be an educator. Saw my mom do it, saw my grandmother do it, saw many aunts do it. Me, we'll talk because we talking real.
Mm-hmm.
My aspiration was to be a rapper. All right. So after high school, and I won't even go into all that, but that
Okay.
was my goal, to be a rapper. Well, fast forward, the rap career didn't make it and all that. It had to come. I came to that fork in the road where it said, "Oh, you got to do something."
Mm-hmm.
So I got a job. My a family member was the head of a department at the Georgia Department of Labor. So I got a job at the Georgia Department of Labor. That's where I met my wonderful wife. Worked there for 2 years. We got married, and she said, "Okay, now these people gonna be in our business, so you need to leave the Georgia Department of Labor and go do something else." All right, what am I gonna do, right? So she said, "Go, maybe go try to be a substitute teacher."
Mm-hmm.
So I did that, and then I got asked to do a long-term position at a school and got the job and all that. And then we used to do these book studies. And at that time, I was getting back in school because, like I said, I tried to be a long term. I did rap for a while, so I got back in. I got into education late in my 30s, early 30s. So I was trying to be I just said I'm gonna do business administration. That's what everybody said. I'm gonna go to school for business administration. But there was my principal that said, "No, man." He wrote. I still have the folder that he wrote on. He says, "You have a knack for this. You show promise to maybe be an educator. So you ought to look into this." And that was in 2003, 2004, and the rest is history.
Wow. Yeah.
Yes. So
It
I
chose
had
you.
no aspirations. I didn't want to do education, none of that. But when I got in there at that time in my life, like as I say, I believe it was that time in my life, I was ready to, do something else. I just loved the kids. I had worked in corporate settings. I wasn't a cubicle type person, and it just was fun, and it came second nature to me.
Right.
So
Right.
education chose me. I didn't choose education.
Now, also, you are a mentor with the Next Level Boys Academy. So let's talk a little bit about Next Level Boys Academy and your position as a mentor.
Okay, well, like I say, it all kind of builds upon each other because my first few years at my school, Seaborn Lee Elementary School in the city of South Fulton, you have daycares and after school programs that come and pick up the students. And Gary Davis was one of those after school programs at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so me and him on the bus ramp, when the kids would dismiss, we would talk as guys, like you say, real recognize real, or we just, were cool with each other. And he was like, "Man, you need to come to my mentorship program one Saturday and see what we do." 2 years went by and I never went to the Saturday program. But this one Saturday, I said, "I'm going to come out there." And then when I went there, I was just so intrigued and enamored by the program because never had I seen a program like this where you're talking to people who had been caught up in the system,
Okay.
but they got a second chance. This is why it's more of a diversion program, not just mentorship. And the
Okay.
stories every Saturday intrigue me because he does it unlike a lot of programs, because my wife and I had signed up to be a mentors several years earlier, but the program was kind of design of what you would do, how you would meet the kids and all of that. No, this program was totally off the cuff, and he just really drilled into the lives and was able to talk real. I always talk about like gym talk, locker talk, or just like when you're playing with your friend on the game,
Mhm.
it's things that a lot of people may not be accustomed to or able to stomach when you come in there, but it's real talk dealing with the kids on their level. So when I heard that and I saw that, I'm like, ooh, I love this. I was intrigued by it. So that was 2018. So, that's been 3 years now.
Mhm.
And my schedule as of late has not allowed me to plug in how I used to plug in, but I'm still very much connected with the program. But that's how I got involved with the Next Level Boys Academy. And they're doing phenomenal work with all of the courts. But let me
Mhm.
just say this: the work is such that, like the Bible says, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. We need everyone to roll up their sleeves and get involved. He said one thing one week, and it's kind of stuck with me. Right now, you as a man or a woman, you cannot just be accountable just for your kid, but you need like 3 or 4 other kids that you're pulling along,
Right.
because the need is that great.
Right.
Yeah,
And that brings us back to community. Like you
yeah,
say, when we were growing up, the community, we were raised by the community. If you went down the street and you did something wrong, your mother found out before you got home, because it was a sense of community. Or if you were down the street, you needed something to eat, you can go to somebody else's house and eat. We've
yes, man.
gotten away from that sense of
Yes,
community.
man.
And I'm
Yo,
glad that
look,
you,
we used to have, can I get an egg? Can I get some sugar?
yeah,
Your next door neighbor would send somebody over, and
yeah,
now it's
yeah,
almost like, who knocking on my door? Who ringing my
yeah.
doorbell? It's all off.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. We've lost that community feeling.
Yeah.
We don't even know our neighbors a lot of
Nope.
times. And
And
then
I'm
that's
guilty
sad.
of a lot of that
Yeah,
myself.
I am
I'm
too.
guilty of it too.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I am
Hmm.
too. But I'm
Yep.
glad I wanted to take time out for you to talk about Next Level Boys Academy, because a lot of organizations look for different um, places like that to partner with and to do community service with. So that's
Yeah.
why I wanted to make sure that that got out with the viewers, that if you're looking for a place to do some community service, look up the Next Level Boys Academy. Because like you
Yeah.
said, the harvest is plenty, but the laborers are few. And there's a lot of viewers on here that can take that time out to research that and to lend a helping hand.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. So we're in 2021, and this pandemic is reaping havoc. And
Yes.
I know when I turn on the news, it's all about the children going to school. Do you wear a mask? Do you not? Do you get the vaccine? Do you not? So let me ask you this. So, as an administrator, what are some challenges that you have seen during the pandemic?
Well, the whole thing was a challenge. I mean, here it is. I don't know if it was March, April. You find out that you're going home. So that was like, huh? We had never seen anything like that. So the big term, and me and you talked about it pre-show, pivot. That
Yeah.
became our big term, our big buzzword, because we constantly had to pivot. And
Mm-hmm.
so early on, the challenge was just how would you, at that time in the year, thankfully it was like almost done, but
Yeah.
how would you facilitate students learning and they're at home? Now, the beautiful thing about Fulton County Schools is, the one-to-one devices. I mean, we've done a good job with making sure that students had their learning devices,
Okay.
as well as not just having devices, but having the apps, the Microsoft Teams, the Flipgrid, all the different apps that the students had to use to then have virtual classrooms. So
Okay.
that was a challenge. But then fast forward, you go through the summer and then you get to the 2020, 2021 school year. It was
Mhm.
like, okay, what are we going to be doing? Because you got to remember, Cobb was doing something different,
Yeah.
APS doing something different, FCS doing something different, the CAB doing something different, and Gwinnett doing something different. So you got all of these different plans out there, but you have
Mhm.
to focus in on your plan. And the options, you had options to either come, well, at first you didn't have the it was in tiered
Right.
involvement into the schools, or enrollment into the schools. So
Mhm.
at first you had all virtual, so then teachers had to just administer all of their lessons through the online platforms. So one of the challenges with that was students are logging on, some students aren't logging on, so that was a challenge. So then how do you hold that student accountable if they aren't logging on, right? So
Mhm.
then it got to another phase where some are in school, and some are still virtual, because you had that option. So
Mhm.
teachers then had to say, well, okay, well, had to pivot and say, I got to teach these students that are in class, but also make sure that my online class is being taught at the very same time.
Right.
So then you still had those challenges of attendance. Some students are logging on, some students are not. Some students, even in the virtual environment, were coming to school and then they'll stay home for 2 to 3 days, right? And
Mhm.
so then at the same time, the district, and you have all of these requirements still coming down the pipe, so
Wow.
you now a lot of it was lessened, so I will put
Okay.
that there, but
Okay.
it's still like, okay, you have to do certain things. So it was just a challenge the whole way through, because you didn't know what was coming day to day.
No.
You didn't know how things were going to look, as well as the biggest challenge, you're worried about your own health and well-being,
Mhm.
right? So during that time, because the government gave all of, I don't know how it came down, but you had those quarantine days, right? So it didn't count against you and your time. So if you became positive, you would have to report that. You would have to stay home, depending on if you did actually have COVID. And this was for whoever, staff, teachers, students as well.
Right.
So then these are kids as well. So some of them want to put the mask on, some of them want to take it off,
Right.
so you constantly put that mask on, and then the temperature checks. So it was just a unique situation that we had never ever seen. And so that's why I always say, right now the challenge is, theoretically, you got some kids that haven't been to school since that March of 2020. Some
Wow.
schools, some kids that never came back even during last year.
Okay.
But that option is not going to be there like it was. And so now on August 9th, I believe it is, our start
Uh-huh.
date, you're going to have all of these kids coming back. Some who were acclimated to being back in school, and some who weren't.
So
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 no
on
one knows what that looks like.
so on August the 9th, it's totally in person.
Totally in person, unless you enrolled in, we do have what's called in my county now, FAVE, Fulton Academy of Virtual Excellence. And so but that's only a certain number of kids that could
Right.
go to that school. It's an online virtual academy. I think they increased the enrollment to like 1,500 students.
Okay.
And so that option, there's no other options but in person now.
Okay. Okay. So
Yeah.
let me ask you this. So you mentioned that when we were all virtual, that you had some students that didn't attend and some that did. So how were you all able to deal with that challenge?
Yeah, so like I said, that was a huge challenge because uh if the kid is coming to school, of course you got you can touch them and you can log them in as being present.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, we had a lot of kids because if the instruction is being done online, and I would say this too, some people were more diligent than others to make sure that okay, they reached out, well, made sure that those kids were logged on, but there were also glitches in the system where kids were logged on and that teacher may not know. I mean, because the technology is not perfect. And
Right.
so I'll just be transparent. I sent my own student, my own son, back in January because I had him virtual, but being in the online environment was not the most conducive for him. Because you got to realize, if mom and dad, everybody couldn't stay home. Some people were
Right.
still working. So if you got school age kids at home and they have to be accountable to log in themselves, sometimes that's going to happen and sometimes that's not going
Right.
to happen. So,
Right.
of course, I don't think it was any negligence on parents or even kids, because I always put myself in the kids' position too. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, hey, you're not used to waking up on and have to go to work like we are as adults. So if that time slipped and you didn't listen to that alarm, you
Yeah.
might have slept in, and before you knew it, it was noon and you weren't in class.
Right.
Whereas some parents woke their children up and put them at the kitchen table or whatever and made it like a school environment at home. I
Right.
didn't do that.
Right.
Because I didn't make it legalistic and tough on them like that, because
Mm-hmm.
that made them, every kid doesn't respond the same. So some
Right.
kids that work for,
Right.
so the challenge was meeting everybody's modality, meaning learning style
Mm-hmm.
during the pandemic, because I mean, everybody doesn't learn the same. So I say that's
Yeah.
why I say it was a very unique year, and we need to exercise a lot of grace and mercy on those kids because, like I say, just think about it. Some seniors didn't see a graduation, didn't see a prom, didn't see, field trips. I mean, school, I'm this educator. School is just not the learning target. Now, that's the main thing, but there's so much else that goes with school. Just going to school and seeing your peers, the
Mm-hmm.
social aspect. I don't put those kids greater than I put myself because I know how I learn. If
Right.
I'm in a meeting, sometimes I need to move around. I just can't sit in those hour, 2, 3 hour long sessions online, right?
Right.
So you had kids online all day,
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
mean, this
That's
was this was
yeah.
tough. And
Yeah.
then the extracurricular stuff, the bands, the football, the this club, the that club.
Yeah.
This also creates a lot of that students' well-being and who
Mm-hmm.
they are, and that wasn't available. A lot of kids thrive on that. So
Right.
the
Right.
challenge was that, yeah, it was about making sure that they got their academics, but we also aren't looking at everything that was not in effect at that time. People cooped up in the house because at first, remember, we were in the house
Yeah.
literally for months because
Right.
we had no vaccine. We
No.
knew not how to deal with this. So I even know that me and my family, we would have to take a ride at night,
Yeah.
after we got offline, early on in the pandemic. We took a car ride every night just to get some fresh air.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
interested to see, me and my wife always talk about years down the line because we probably won't see the effects of this right now. But
Right.
years down the line, the mental health behind how
Mm-hmm.
this affected everyone is what I'm concerned about, which is why we need to have a lot of grace and mercy now. And I know the school systems are putting things in play for dealing with how kids and as well as parents are feeling. We
Right.
got to make sure that component is looked after and adhered to and respected, I'll say.
Right. And let me ask you this because I saw a news report where they were talking about that normally in the school system, the curriculum was this for every student. And you just touched on that every student learns differently, right?
Yeah.
And then they showed some teachers that stated that the disparities were enlightened in the education system because you had to tailor in order to reach that child. Even though the curriculum was like this, you had to now really tailor that curriculum for that student.
Right.
Instead of that being across the board. So let's talk a little bit about that. How did the curriculum have to change when the teachers went to online? Um,
Well, here's the thing. I mean, that's nothing new, even when you don't have a pandemic. Differentiation and personalization is something that we as teachers are constantly drilled into that we have to do, as well as you learn that you need to. When I said modalities, we learn that in our teacher preparation program. We
mhm,
learn in college, you learn that every child is not the same. So,
right,
while yeah, you may have had to deal with it in a different way. That
mhm,
shouldn't have been anything new to any skilled teacher. That,
right,
yeah, you then have to meet that child where they are. But now,
where they
like you say, the problem with that was then that we are all online then, and so it's kind of hard to, like in the classroom, you would have movement. Okay, I'm
are.
gonna teach this lesson and I'm gonna do more movement. Like when I was a math teacher, or I'm gonna bring in visuals. If I'm teaching fractions, I'm gonna bring in a Subway sandwich that day and cut it in half or cut it in
Yeah.
quarters so that the kids can see that. And then our prize at the end of the day is that we're gonna eat that sandwich,
Right,
or the
right,
Oreo cookies or whatever. So, or we're gonna go outside on the blacktop and then we're gonna draw the number line and have us physically go down the number line and then count how many spaces you are from that thing. So
right,
we should, as teachers, be skilled at being able to teach the different modalities and the different learning styles. But yes, it was much, much more of a challenge being online. I'm not going to get into because I haven't seen every teacher. I don't know
right.
how everybody did it. I know we did as best we could at our school because, like I say, we had a lot of great instructors and teachers who were able to pivot and make sure our kids were seen after. But that's one of those things there. Now, of course, you couldn't do everything like you would have been able to do in the classroom.
Right.
But I think that was all taken into account because of course certain standards were relaxed and certain things that would have been in place. They said, okay, well, this is a unique situation, so whereas you had to be here, we're gonna tailor and custom fit your goals. So that's something I think it's going to be a challenge anyway, because that's going to be a challenge even when we get back to school in a few weeks. There are going to be some people that are able to teach the different modalities and learning styles better than others, but
Right.
it's still in 2021 an expectation that everyone meets the different needs of the kids. Yep.
Okay. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about mask mandates. Right. So, what is the current mask mandate for the educational system, and what is your perspective on it?
Well, whenever you talk about educational system, you have to break it down because every system is not the same and every superintendent and board is not implementing the same thing. So we have APS, FCS, Gwinnett, Cobb, and everybody has what they're doing. So I'll speak to FCS and
Okay. So, but
it
let me
is
ask you this though. Let me ask you this though. So, isn't there, and I don't know, I'm just asking. So, is there a Georgia um something with the
well.
Georgia education, and then everybody trickles down for that? Is it something like that, or does every county get to set their own rules?
Yeah, well, the CDC is going to be the main guy, right?
Hey,
And so then, though, the particular school system gets to say, okay, well, They're going to look at that, the best practice of that, but there's some leeway on how they implement things as well. You could be either err on the side of more caution. I'm not going to say more caution, because that will then say that the other systems are being less cautious. But they look at a lot of data. And so I was watching a school system the other day say, well, I see what the CDC says, but then we have our own data. And so we're going to implement how we're going to implement. So I can only talk for my county right now. Masks are going to be required on the buses.
Okay.
The wording is strongly encouraged in school. Now that can change tomorrow. It can change. It might get changed even before we get off the phone right now.
Okay. This is daily.
Yeah, because it's daily. But right now, the last literature I saw said that masks will be required on the buses and strongly encouraged within the schools. But they also say too that people who haven't been vaccinated are strongly encouraged to have a mask. But a lot of what we were into, and even the 3 to 6 feet, I saw where it says 3 to 6 feet is encouraged where possible. So you got to look in the wording. So if it's not possible, then you're not going to be slapped on the wrist if you can't do the 3 to 6 feet, because the wording is a little different than it was where it said this is mandatory last year. But now also too, they discourage certain like meetings and get-ups. So if you don't have to have this meeting, don't meet. If you don't have to have this gathering, don't gather. So the wording is more like, let's not, just hey, but also too, we're not like we were before. But like I said, with this new Delta variant, things could change. They're changing rapidly.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I think that's where a lot of confusion is coming in at, right? Because I didn't know that every county can make their own decisions, right?
Yeah.
And I think,
I said, it's not that they can make their decision. They still adhere to the CDC's best practices.
Right.
But you would have to look at their whole document.
Right.
And then, then they look at the document and say, okay, well, we're, you're encouraging 3 feet, right? Let's just say you're encouraging 3 feet, but this county might say, oh no, we're going to do 6 feet.
Right.
So they're going to be extra.
So so the CDC guideline is the beginning, right? Okay. And then you look at that, and then each county can make adjustments where they see fit for their county. Right.
And like I said, I don't know the exact chain of command and all of that.
Right. No, I'm
so I want to not just put anything on record that this is law. Right. But I know everybody says, okay, we're looking at the CDC, and then, like I say, they pivot from there with their guidelines and what they put into place as far as a district goes.
Yeah. And see, I think for a parent, I think, that's where a lot of the confusion comes in at, right?
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why I got on the subject, because my daughter graduated in 2020 from high school. So when you said that, some students didn't have a prom, they didn't have a graduation, that was my student, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then, we talked to the principal, we talked to the superintendent, we talked to the principal, we talked to the superintendent, and they were just hell bent on no, right?
Yeah,
but then you have neighboring counties that said yes, and they said, we're going to work it out. This is what we're going to do. We're going to limit this, we're going to limit that, but we're going to allow the kids to have the graduation. And see, we were all confused because we thought that there was a Georgia Association of Schools, and then, okay, so they were the top, and then or like a lead superintendent for Georgia, and then all the superintendents reported up to him. And then, but what I ended up finding out was that no, the superintendents could make they could do, I'm not going to say they can do what they want to do, but they could make the decision based on what they felt, them and the board felt was best practices for that county. right?
Right.
And there comes the confusion. So I want
Yeah.
everybody to understand that they look at the CDC and the guidelines, which we all do, businesses do that.
Right.
But then each individual county they're making decisions based on their data and what they feel is right for their children.
As well as how they feel they can pull off the requirements. I'll talk about my kids' school, his band program, Creekside High School, Fulton County School. And so we still performed as a band at football games last year, at least home games, I'll say.
Okay.
Be- because Mr. Bailey, the instructor, was able to adhere to all of the strict guidelines that the county put in to be able to perform, which
Right.
was you were seated behind the goalposts. We weren't in the stands. You're 6 feet apart. We're in those seats. The music specialist from the county would come and look at the program. We have cameras even in the school systems now that they would just pop in and see if we were adhering to the guidelines. And
Mm-hmm.
so, sometimes it's like, okay, the comfort level of that school system saying, well, we can pull this off in a safe manner,
Right.
right? So, some of that was involved too. And then some I saw, I'm just going to say I saw some people not even care about that. Not some people, but some districts, just kind of do what they wanted to do. When you said you saw neighboring districts
Right.
having proms, having graduations and all of that. So like you say, that created a lot of confusion because if you as a parent looking at how they're doing it, why
Right.
can't we do it?
Correct.
And so, a lot of tough decisions. That comes back to kind of our intro into this whole this whole segment when we talked at the beginning about looking at a bigger picture as an administrator and as a
Right.
councilman.
Right.
There's so many decisions and things that have to be taken into it, taken into, thought about
Right.
with when you're leading something. So, that's why I'm careful to say, oh, they could have done better. They shouldn't have done that, because now just in my small roles, I see that, somebody might say we could have done something different, but you don't know all the things we're looking at,
Right.
and all the things we have to take into account,
Right.
so these are one of those things that, we never lived through before. And like I say, some people, chose to forge ahead, and some people chose to err on the side of caution. Let's just say, even for the city, we have not even opened up City Hall. And it took us a long time, not a long time because we erred on the side of caution, but Duncan Park, because everybody wanted to come to Duncan Park because we have a beautiful pool. We have all the amenities. But then you don't understand that there's somebody that has to change out those restrooms
Mm-hmm.
all the time, make sure they're clean. Who's going to be monitoring a pool? Okay, if you open the park up, it's such a premier park. People from every other city are coming to our park. Who's going to monitor them? Are they
Yeah.
staying in the right areas that's opened?
Yeah.
Right. So then we had to make a decision, which wasn't a popular decision in the city, to stay closed for a long time.
Right.
So
Right.
those are those things that I'm saying that, as the citizens, as the parents, as whoever on the outside looking in at why certain decisions are made, I'm sure that there's a lot of other factors that you may be not privy to that
Right.
went into that decision.
Right. So
Yeah.
let me ask you this. I was at a town hall today, and one of the researchers was talking about the Delta variant, and he was saying that the Delta variant is really should be taken seriously because it is multiplying at a quicker rate than the regular COVID, the COVID-19, the regular COVID-19, and then you have the Delta variant, and there's some more other variants that are coming, but
Yes.
it's multiplying, it's duplicating itself in your system quick, right?
Right.
So
Right.
instead of it being shown within 7 to 14 days, it's shown within 3 to 4, right?
Yes.
So it's more contagious. So
Yes.
with that coming out and that information being available to everybody, what is your perspective on the vaccination? In your county, are teachers, I know the answer, but I'm just going to ask anyway. So are teachers required to be vaccinated? And then B, if not, what do you think that they should be?
Okay, well, no, they can't mandate or require the teachers to be vaccinated. uh and as far as my particular, here's the thing. We've never lived through anything like this, as well as there is not the greatest history with a certain demographic with vaccines and just the government. So I say that, I preface and say that because I am one still that believes that people have a choice with their bodies to do what they do. But I do also understand too, I understand both sides.
Right.
Because when I said that we haven't lived through a situation like this before, we weren't alive when polio and all these other things were going on. So we take these shots anyway when we're kids, right? So that's the argument for the vaccine, that you're vaccinated anyway. But at the same time, in such a rapid fashion, the vaccine was created and gotten, and that kind of puzzled me at a certain point. But then I read some literature that said that, well, we never have we had the whole world working on the same thing at the same time, and all of these finances went to getting, and all the tests were being run simultaneously. So I saw some literature that eased my mind about that. But you got to realize, particularly in the Black community, you look at things like Tuskegee and just all of these things. These are things that people say, which aren't the same, as this. But, so you have a lot of apprehension behind the vaccine. So personally, I don't know what is the right answer, because we are in a tough situation. We are seeing this Delta variant rise, but I still am, as an American, like I still don't know, because here's the thing too, it hasn't been all the way approved yet too. That was another argument. It was authorized for emergency usage, which I believe, though, they're saying that the Pfizer is very close to being approved. So I just am one that never ever calls people dumb, stupid, ignorant for not doing, because like I say, it's brand new. Years from now we'll have more data and all that. So I'm kind of neutral on that, because I see both sides, and that's kind of how I always am. I'm that peacemaker. I'm that person that is always the voice of reason in a room, and whether because I'm not a box person, Don't put me as a Republican. Don't put me as a Democrat. Don't put me as Black. Don't put me as white. Don't put me as nothing, because I'm bigger than that. Because everything is not in a box. You cannot fit me, my dynamic personality, and who I am, in just a box, because sometimes you won't fit in that box. So like I said, I'm empathetic to hear everyone, and I just say people need to take. Now, I do understand this, though. People who have had people that have died and loved ones that suffer, I understand their angst, and they're like, man, come on, y'all got to do this. But there are still people who don't even know a person other than somebody in the news personally that has been affected by COVID. So they're saying in their mind, and if they themselves haven't been affected, they're like, why do I need it? I've been good. At the height of it, I did what I did, and I've been good. So I just say, I don't know. I'm glad I'm not in the position like the presidents and all the heads of these companies, because I see private entities mandating it because they can do such. We're on a slippery slope. I say this. I always say this. I'm not, I'll go with whatever, but I do see each side. I just try to hear people, because I feel like we're too pitted against each other anyway in society. But I do see, personally, this is about to be the new Civil War the vaccinated and the unvaccinated, and it's gonna be,
Yeah,
and they're gonna, and
yeah,
companies are being savvy now to be able to pit people against each other, like with the NFL. No, they're not saying you got to be vaccinated, but y'all gonna lose money if we have an outbreak and we have to shut down, and then it comes back to an unvaccinated person. So you already know in the locker room, well, dang, I'm missing money because of you. All
yeah.
right, but you're not vaccinated. They're
Yeah,
about to pit, they're about to pit people against each other. So I'm very concerned about where we're going, and I just hope we have a peaceful resolve and can move ahead in society.
yeah, and I think just looking at it from the we're just hearing from a lot of the college and the university system. They're
Mm-hmm.
making it mandatory that
Mandatory. Yep.
all their students are
Yep.
vaccinated.
Yep.
Now the schools are going towards making it mandatory
Yep.
that the students, the faculty, and the staff are all vaccinated, right?
Yep.
And then they're coming down with the same form that they
Yep.
had for the flu shot. You
Yep.
have two ways to get an exemption, but other than that, and I don't know if you saw on the news last week that the faculty at Emory Healthcare had put together a petition, and
Mm.
they had a signed petition. It was on the news because, and it was the faculty that was putting together the signed petition, because if you've got the kids, Emory is a very diverse place, and if
Right.
you have kids from all over the world
Yeah.
coming, that and you're telling that the students have to be vaccinated, and then you're not saying that for the faculty and the staff, and the students have to interact with the faculty and staff.
Right.
And I'm bringing this up because it's the same way in the school system where you're at, right?
Yep.
People have to understand that the Delta. I said this today to somebody, that it shouldn't take somebody dying at my place of employment for people to really understand that this
Right.
thing is serious.
Yes.
And you're right. Some people have not been affected by it, but it shouldn't take that. When we saw
Yeah.
those coffins, and those makeshift graves on the news,
Yeah.
to me that hit home.
Yeah. But here's the thing, though. You got a whole. I mean, not a whole, but alt news is big as well. So some people will say, "Well, I see those coffins, but I didn't see them." So
yeah,
that's one of those things too. We have so much information out here, and some people still think it's a hoax. And some people, so that's what I'm saying. And we just have to, in love, try to reach those people, as opposed to, like I say, some of the rhetoric and how things are going back and forth. That's just where I'm at with it, because there are some people that are live and die by conspiracy,
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
that
That's
it's
true.
not true.
Yeah,
Like I say,
yeah,
you've seen a lot of people die, famous people die,
yeah.
and people will still say it's not true. So how do you, no matter what you say or show them, that you're dealing with something else then.
Right.
But then I say, then you just have a lot of innocent people that, like, they're apprehensive. I talk to a lot of good people daily. Say, I'm just apprehensive about that. I was on my way to get it, and then I turned around. I'm just apprehensive about putting that in my body.
Right. Yeah.
So, because like I said, I think the unique thing for us in 21 is that we're living through such a thing like this, where
Right.
we haven't had to live through the other vaccines. That was something that we just took as a kid and we didn't have to question.
Right.
Now, one of the biggest things we have too is media. So
Right.
now everybody has an opinion. Everybody can research something. And so it's different now, which is creating all of the various mindsets and opinions behind it.
Yeah. And you
Yeah.
know what? The things that happened in the past, we read about it. Now
Yeah.
today we're living it.
We're
So
living it.
it's
We're
totally
living
different.
it.
Let
Yes.
me ask you another question. Give viewers tips on how they can help their children prepare for the new school year.
Well, love them. Love them, love them. Just let them know that, be an advocate for your child. Be at the school. Go to the PTA. Just go up there, not just when there's a problem. Support your administrators and your teachers. See how you can volunteer like I say, I know with COVID that might not, but even online or just giving items, whatever you can do, because everybody's not in a financial position, but just be involved in your child's education. Ask them what they're studying. Ask them, they talk to them. All right. If you're just rolling down the street, talk to them, tell me what you, and not just be, and like I say, I'm guilty of it too. Thankfully, media and phones weren't so big early on that, but I even, I'm in it too, because
Right.
I gotta get into this podcast with Tina. I'm just coming from work. We're all on it, which is something I hate because we're always available now. If you weren't available when we were young, you just weren't available. Now
Right.
you're always available and you seem obligated or feel obligated. You got to answer all that stuff. So
Yeah.
there's times when I just purposefully unplug,
Right.
right? And so even your kids are on something all the time,
Yeah.
but how you can support your child is just be there for them and support them. And like I said, you may not even know the subjects they're studying or how to support them in that math that they're doing because it's new and that's not how you did it. But
Right.
just be visible, all right? And not be that person, like I said, everybody is very, very quick to tell us what we're not doing right,
Yeah.
but you don't see them. Well, I ain't gonna, and I hate to paint a broad generalization brush stroke, but it's the same thing. I'll just talk about it though. Councilmen, they say what you're not doing at the city, but there's the same 20, 30 people that show up to the meetings.
Yeah.
They'll tell you what you're not doing at the school, but there's the same 20, no, 10 to 55 to 10 parents that come to the PTA.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's the same thing in culture. Everybody say what the kids are not doing and how they're robbing and killing everybody, but nobody's pulling them and trying to help them and teach them along. So you got 100 kids that need mentors, but you got 3 mentors.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
society is the same thing that's going on everywhere. We all have an opinion.
Yeah.
We all can go to Facebook and IG and say, man, that's horrible. Did you see that? But I always say, I mean, what are you doing, to help that? Be the change.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
My first principle always used to say, don't come to me with a problem if you're not ready, not just with the solution, but ready to walk that solution out.
Yeah.
You author that project for that solution. Don't tell
Right.
me something wrong unless you are going to be the solution. And right
Okay.
now we all know what's wrong out here,
Yeah.
but how many solution people do we have? So that's what I can say. Just get involved. And like I say, now it's going to kind of be like you're going outside of just your family. All right. I got my son, I got my girls, but I'm also involved in other kids' lives too,
Right.
whether it's at the band program, whether it's at the mentorship, and just plug in where you are. You don't have to go and be somebody else, but you got a gift that God gave you that is necessary to somebody else's upbringing and an upward trajectory. You
Mm-hmm.
ain't got to be the great speaker or the orator or all that, but you might have, I know HR, so I know how to make these kids have good resumes and good interview skills. You might be the good cook. You know what? I'm gonna go up there and bring the where you might food and all that. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Plug
Yeah.
in where you
Where
are
you
with your
can.
gift. We all have a gift, and it's gonna take us all to change this narrative and to change this situation.
I have one more question. So, what
Yes.
advice would you give educators that are struggling to adjust to their new educational norm?
Well, you just then have to, I'm always that. Now we all need a cheerleader and we all need somebody to cheerlead for us. But education, I always used to say in my media, cause we always come together like, why are you doing this? I say there's 3 types of people in education. There's the person that's their call, there's the person that's their career, and the person that's just a job for them, right?
Mm.
So If you're in education and it's a job for you, that's that person that can go to Walmart or go to wherever if they're gonna get the check, And so, I mean, it's kind of hard. Yeah, they're gonna come in, and when it's good, they're gonna be there, and But then there's the career-oriented person where they're a little more than the job, but it's about them and how their career is gonna be advanced. But education really is just like preaching or any something of that nature, because it's really a call. It's going to take something in you that's greater than what you're given by your administration, what you're given by your district, what you're even given to you by your parents, because it's a thankless profession.
Yeah.
So it starts with you being your own cheerleader. First, knowing that you're in this because you want to be an educator, right? Because our reward is seeing their faces. You changed my life, Mr. Smallwood. You changed my life. I come in here daily because you help me. My home is such and such, but I feel so safe in your classroom. That's really what and a lot of people get into it for that, but then they see all the other stuff that comes with it, right?
Yeah.
So my advice to any educator or anybody doing anything, it starts with you before you leave your house in the morning. I come and I have to get my mind together. And I always say education is like being an athlete. You're not going to be able to stay up like everybody else. You're not going to be able to go out like everybody else. When it's August to May, that's our quote season. That's our football season. That's our basketball season. To be your best, you're going to have to go in there and make sure that you are ready to take whatever they're going to give you, right? So it really is, it starts with you, but then also too, administrators and district people, we have to understand too that we are coming from a time we've never seen before. And I applaud Simone Biles and Naomi because they are acknowledging mental health. I'm not good every day.
Yeah.
It only takes it takes the Holy Spirit talking me down a lot of times, because this life we're living in 2021 is hard. It's a lot to it. So I said that to the teachers, but we as admin and we as district people are going to have to be very, very cognizant of people's mental health.
Yeah.
We want them to get a certain score on that test, but if that teacher ain't right, because a lot going on at home, and I mean the housing costs, and stuff is going crazy out here all over the board. So we have one of the biggest challenges coming up in this school year that I've never seen, because society is pressing in everywhere, from the COVID to, like you say, the economics. So much is unsure and uncertain, but I believe we are overcomers. I always told my class, we are the Smallwood Scholars. We are problem solvers, solution finders. So, we got to do this. We got to do it,
Yeah. And the only way to do it is to do it together.
Do it together. Do it together. And also too, don't be afraid to wave the white flag on that day and say, I got to tap out right now. And that's what me and my admin do a lot, because as admin, you're taking everything. And so some days we come in like, look, I can't take it today. Can you go talk to that parent, that irate parent, or can you go talk to that person? Yeah, I had it the last 4 or 5 times, but today I need to tap out. And I think that's what we need to normalize. And what I'm seeing, what I said about Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka, they were some of the ones with that first, and they were in the public spotlight, and they, had to step back. But we got to normalize that now, because unlike before, when you were kind of just in your little zone, we got everybody watching us now. Everybody has an opinion, and we're human. So, and some of us are stronger than others. I think we're all kind of the same. Some of us deal with the hurt or the pain differently, but it all at some point comes down on you. And so give yourself permission to fail. Give yourself permission to hurt. Give yourself permission to cry. Get accountability partners that can lift you up, and then pick yourself up from there and move forward.
Well, I've always said that, you got to find, you know, you got to find your ministry, or like you said, you got to
Yeah.
find your calling, that thing that drives you to get up every morning. And
Yes.
I knew when I was looking at what I wanted to do for a career that education, school teacher, and daycare provider was not it. It was not it. I'm just being honest, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
being in school and seeing all the things that they had to deal with then, and now seeing that teachers are supposed to be there to stimulate the minds of our children and to teach, and now they have to be DFACs, they have to be therapists, they have to be counselors, they have to be regulators, they have to be mandators, and their salaries doesn't reflect all the things that the mandates that are put
Yes.
on them. And I
Yes.
think right now in 2021 and during the pandemic, the one thing that has happened is that people have really, really, really valued, or now can really see and appreciate the value of our teachers and our educators. And
Yes.
I just want to say to all the teachers and educators that are watching, thank you. Thank you for the countless hours that you have spent preparing the lessons. Thank you for the times that you've taken time out with our students to hear their cries and to figure out what's going on at home. Thank you for stepping in the role of DFACs, and trying to save our kids. Just thank you. And if nothing else, the world should give you a big hooray, a pat on the back, and really, really appreciate you. I knew, just seeing what I went through, and was seeing what they went through when I was a student. When I had kids, I always made sure that my students' teachers were taken care of. That's the least that I can do. What can I do? Do you need some hand sanitizer? Do you need some clinics? Okay, so now we may be in some schools are going hybrid, some schools are going in person. Like he said, all districts are doing different things, right? But I want to say, piggyback on what you said while we're ending the show, is that reach out to that educator, whether it's your child's educator or a friend that's in the education community. Encourage them. You said that. Encourage them. If they don't need anything else, they need encouraging to get up one more day, get up one more time, just to stimulate that mind, right? Just encourage them because they need it. And you said it. We're in a time that we've never seen before.
Yes.
CDC doesn't have all the answers. The school system don't have all the answers. So one thing we can try to do is to give them a little grace. Give them a little grace,
Yeah.
and a lot of times, I saw this, and I'm going to say this because I think it's appropriate. A lot of times people fear what they don't know.
Mm.
A lot of times people fear. Fear means false evidence that appears real, right? So a lot
Yeah.
of times people fear the unknown. What you don't know is what you fear. So let's tap into the schools. Let's get the information. Let's ask the questions. Let's get the answers, right? If you're not getting the answer from where you think you need to get the answer, go up the food chain, get the answer, so that
Mm-hmm.
so now that you can make educated decisions about your child's education. Don't take it from the neighbor. Go to the education system, partner with those administrators, partner with the administrators, partner with the school system, right? Don't take somebody else's word for it. Partner with them. I hope everybody found this information valuable. I thought it would be great to have someone that's in the school system to come on and give his perspective of education in the pandemic. One thing that he said that really struck me is that we have the guidelines that we're trying to follow, but different counties have to shape their decisions a little differently because of their constituents and the people that they serve and the children that they serve, right? Because not two children are the same, not two counties are the same, right? But a lot of times people let, I call it the idiot tube. You know, they let that shape their decisions instead of reaching out to those educators and administrators and scientists and getting the information for yourself so that you can make the best decision for your children. Mask on, mask off. Vaccinate, don't vaccinate. Send the kid to school, e-learning at home. You got to get the correct information so that you can make the best decision for your family. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I
Thank you. It was
appreciate
a
you coming
pleasure.
on. I really do. And I think your perspective was very valuable. I
All
really
right.
do. And
Thank
I just
you.
want to say thank you. Everyone, I thank you for viewing. We will see you next week, same time, same place. Good night, everybody.